Welcome to the Motorcycles or Drugs podcast, a show where we speak with artists and engineers, connoisseurs and problem solvers from the moto world and beyond. I'm Henri Boulanger.
And I'm Gary Boulanger.
We're a father-son team that has collaborated for years through storytelling and imagery, often combining our creativity with the adventure and community we've found on two-wheeled machines. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Today's guest is Torsten Robbens. He's been riding motorcycles with his twin brother Bjorn since they were 4 years old. Torsten spent years traveling the globe while working in Formula One, but is proud to call his native Belgium home. He is still the youngest team manager to ever win the Le Mans 24-hour endurance race, a grueling test of teamwork and machinery. Always seeking the next challenge, he and Bjorn revived the historic Belgian motorcycle brand Saroléa and developed an electric motorcycle to race on the Isle of Man.
I like getting stuff done. I don't like talking about big projects. I like to do stuff, get my hands dirty and design stuff and build stuff and test stuff and go racing, you know. This is Torsten Robbens, and you are listening to the Motorcycles or Drugs podcast.
So today we're talking about electric motorcycles, being Belgian, and future EV battery development with Torsten Robbens. Let's start it off from the top, Torsten. How did you come to be a motorcyclist?
I think it's a family trade. It was a gift from my granddad and my father. We were born in a family where especially motocross was quite important. My grandfather used to ride motorcycles. He was mainly a cyclist, next to being a carpenter as a trade. But then my dad, he started riding bikes when he was very young and was very talented riding them, unlike myself. And he mainly did motocross, and then later on in the 80s did some supermoto and enduro. And he was actually very good at it. Became a Belgian champion a couple of times. And I think, motorcycles have always been around. Always been a workshop with dad tinkering on his bikes. It couldn't have been anything else than motorcycles. So, yeah, I started early. My dad, he also built loads of bikes for me and my brother. I have a twin brother when we were small. And we got our first sidecar when I think we must have been 3 or 4 years old before we could cycle on a normal bicycle. We were already on the sidecar, and that's how it started. You know, got on the sidecar, hit an apple tree, and so on. You know, the beginning of lots of fun adventures.
What motivated you to continue with motorcycles? I mean, there's a lot of folks we talk to who start just like you at a very early age off-road. But obviously, with what you've done with the Saroléa brand, you've taken it to the pavement.
Yeah, I must admit that when I was very young, we rode mainly off-road and motocross on some small tracks here. And then there must have been there were a couple of years until when I was 15 or 16 that other things were more important, and then I started getting interested in working on mopeds back then myself, and early on started modifying them, making them quicker. Obviously, that would be the most important thing, but also not being afraid to put different cylinder heads on a certain engine, or modify the bike's gearboxes or drivetrains. And it's always been a hands-on approach. The idea was there, and we were lucky because our father had all the tools in his workshop and in the garage, and we could actually build what we imagined. And I think later on, growing up and acquiring more skills and also machines and equipment of myself, there was a moment where I said, now I have to build something completely by myself from scratch. And that came together with the start of the first not the first electric motorcycles, because obviously motorcycles have been electric since decades. But when the first races on the Isle of Man started in 2009, I think that was sort of a turning point where I thought, yeah, what these guys do, that's something that I can probably do as well. And given that I had gained experience in composites and so on, it would have been a shame not to try something of myself. So yeah, 2009 probably a turning point with the first Isle of Man TT0.
So if we take a step back several years, when you were involved with 24 Hours Le Mans and other motorsports racing, at what point did you get involved with four wheels?
Well, I was a student for a very long time, but I was, let's say, not very good at it, in the sense that I would only go to classes that really inspired me, or go to classes by teachers that really inspired me. So when I was 16, 17, 18, I changed school, and I started doing a course for becoming an airplane mechanic. And then later on, I went to university to do aerospace engineering. After a couple of years, when I figured out, that wasn't really meant for me, I started looking for a job, and I was really fascinated about composites, carbon fiber materials. Back in the 90s, that was not new, but still quite far off from what I was doing in the garage. So I just literally picked up my phone and started calling all these companies in the UK, because composites in the UK was booming with all the Formula One teams that are located there. So I tried to get a job, and obviously everybody gave me the same reply: "What experience do you have?" And so I said none. And then one person said, what's your experience level? I said, I don't really know anything, but I'm willing to learn. And so he said, okay, you can come, and but we won't pay you. We'll just pay for your food and your lodgings. And if you come over, you have a job, and we'll give it a couple of months to try. So I took my what was it, an MBK booster. That's like a 50cc moped scooter thing, and I strapped a rucksack to my back and went to the front and put a big bag of clothes in between my legs, behind the handlebars, and I drove from Belgium all the way to the ferry, and then through England, southern England, and got pulled over by the police a few times, because in Belgium we didn't have number plates on mopeds back then. But I finally arrived, and I spent 2 months there working on what were basically Formula One cars, because this company, DPS Composites, where I got this opportunity, they were actually a big subcontractor for McLaren F1. So the first things I was working on was parts for Formula One cars. And that was the start of a long and interesting career in first Formula One, and then later on in Le Mans 24 Hours. Because next to building components for the cars, obviously racing is, that's what I live for still today. The owner of the company I used to work for, he also had a Le Mans 24-hour race team, and I got the opportunity to go with them to Le Mans the first time, and that was 2001, to basically clean wheels, clean the garage and so on. And that was my first taste of endurance racing, which up until today for me is still the most pure form of racing, because it takes 3 drivers, a lot of talented mechanics, and if you have a crash, the race isn't over, because you will always try to get that car to the finish. So I did that, and then obviously continued in Formula One, and I worked for several teams during those years. Eventually moved back to Europe, to Germany, where I worked for Toyota F1. Then I got a call one day from a Japanese lady, and she explained that her boss, Mr. Go, who is a Japanese industrial, he would like to meet with me, because I actually worked on one of his cars. Worked on is a big word, I was part of the team, and I was like an apprentice mechanic, and he would like to speak to me, because he was looking for someone who could be the middle man in communication between European sports car manufacturer and his Japanese race team. And that's where, being from Belgium, somewhat we have an advantage. We're a very small country, so we have to adapt, and speaking multiple languages is our way of getting around in the world. So I met Mr. Go in Munich, and we spoke for a very long time. That was then the lobby of the Kempinski Hotel in Munich. And what he was saying, what he wanted to do, what his dream was from when he was a kid, I felt that, we had a lot in common. So I quit my job in F1. I moved to Tokyo to become first an assistant, and then later on a team manager for his Le Mans 24-hour effort. That was during the course of 3 years. We participated with a full Japanese outfit, privateer outfit, with an Audi R8, which is very successful Le Mans sports car. And eventually we won Le Mans 24 Hours in 2004 overall. I was lucky enough to be able to join the great drivers like Tom Christensen and Bindo Capello and Segiara on the podium. And that day I became the youngest team manager ever to win Le Mans 24 Hours. So my highlight in my career.
How old were you when you won?
30 years. And I continued working for several F1 teams, and always combining it with Le Mans as a team manager or as a technical expert, repairing cars on site. I had at one point a composite repair service where we catered for all the teams. So any teams that had accidents and during testing or qualifying, they could come to us, and we would repair their bodywork, but also their chassis, their monocoques for the sports cars on site. And it's a very intense period, because Le Mans 24 hours, it's like 1.5, 2 weeks that you're there, but everything happens within 1 week. You have your training and qualifying on the Wednesday and the Thursday, and on the Friday there's most teams put a new engine in their car, ready for the race to start on Wednesday. But if you had a big crash on Wednesday or Thursday with a carbon monocoque, that used to be game over. But we did very intricate repairs where cars that had wishbones ripped out, we bonded new inserts in, and so on. So really pushing what composite repairs was in sports cars. Now it's more common practice, but back then it was quite novel. And then I did that for a few years, and then began to spend more time back in Belgium, less on the road, because in those almost 10 years that I did all that racing and in four-wheelers, it was basically from one hotel to another, and take a plane on a flight, arrive somewhere in the world, and go to a racetrack. And life really passes you by. You don't really have, you make good money, but you don't have time to spend it on nice stuff like bikes. So I did that, and then I decided I wanted to spend more time at home and do other stuff. I refocused my efforts on composites for space applications, because the space industry is very traditional in the sense that they don't really like to test new materials or new processes. And with what I've learned over the past years in F1. I thought I could, bring some new ideas, and I got the opportunity to develop optical parts for now 3 different space missions, which was great because as a small company back then I was still a one-man band. I got to work on really big projects, but from my what we call here my shed back in Belgium, and it's very satisfying to see something that you've worked on for 1 or 2 years, because these projects took a long time, that it gets finally shot up into space, and eventually one lands on Mars. So that was great. And then in 2009, where the first TT0 was launched, and I again redirected, this time full time, into motorcycles, designing and building motorcycles.
That's a lot. You have really kind of run the gamut of different disciplines. You've even made stuff that has left the earth. With all these different projects, what keeps you focused on, like, what gets you excited? Because to look at everything that you've done on paper, it bounces around, and you kind of hinted at a little bit of your life kind of looked the same, and you were always on the road, and there's all these challenges, but it does, for as exciting as it is, start to turn into this one thing. You even started getting involved with different Hollywood projects, and we'd love to hear about that as well. But what sort of guides what you want to do, and when do you decide to move on to something else?
If I get bored is not the correct word, but if I love it when someone says that's not possible. It's not been done. It's not possible. And then I bite myself into it, and I really go for it. But I think the biggest advantage that I have is that if I have an idea, I have a nice skill set, and I have the ability to surround myself with people that are specialists in their field, and I can motivate other people to do a project that is, that would otherwise require so much money and or time if it was done in the industry, that it's possible. So when do I change directions? When there's no more challenges, when the idea is matured, and it's on its own legs. I don't know if you say that in the States. Yeah, then it's time to move on and do something different. And I think that's every couple of years I have the urge to reinvent myself, maybe to change direction. I don't really follow any trends, or I think everybody tries to do that in life. I hope. I do I try to do what I love doing, and I don't like being in meetings, and people that know me well, they 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 will confirm that. I like getting stuff done. I don't like talking about big projects. I like to do stuff, get my hands dirty, and design stuff, and build stuff, and test stuff, and go racing. That's my biggest motivator, is make it and go racing. That's what I live for. That's what I get up for in the morning, is to go racing and to ride bikes every day, because that's what I do. I ride a bike every day. I'm lucky enough to have a few bikes in my collection, and I ride them every day, but not because I'm very skillful or talented, but to learn, to learn what's the difference between them. Why does this one? Why is this better than that? And to maybe get an idea to mature and evolve into a new project. So that's what I do. And when I saw that or heard rather the first TT race over the radio, over the internet radio, that's the kind of stuff that dreams are built of. The Isle of Man TT. For bike nut, you like it or you don't, but it's incredible what these guys do and what the teams behind them do, and so much is still built there. I have a huge appreciation for especially the sidecar guys, because most of these teams, they design and they build their own sidecars, and then they go and race them. So I've never had the urge to race my own creations because I think there's people that do it a lot better and a lot quicker. To be able to imagine a bike and then build it and then get a guy on it and they go around that island and over the mountain at the speed that we can only, as mortals, normal mortals, only dream about. That feeling, that satisfaction is so huge. But on the other hand, it's also very scary, yeah? To have built something and then get someone on there on the Isle of Man. It's satisfying, but so scary that you wonder every time they go off the start line. You really hope for the best. But these guys are so skilled. Obviously, the electric bikes were a lot slower than the petrol bikes they rode. So these guys they run at 80% of what they're capable of. So I think racing for me is important because it proves that what you imagined or what you think is the way to go, that it actually works. And it puts pressure on, there's deadlines that you have to respect, and it just pushes the technology much faster than it would in a commercial product. That's why I like racing more than production vehicles, because there's much less constraints and the creativity can be much bigger.
It's much more specialized. And it definitely sounds like that racing challenge is something that even for somebody like you who does shift your focus from time to time, that seems like that's always going to be at your core, sort of a passion you'll always return to for all the reasons that you were talking about. Tell us a little bit about rejuvenating the Saroléa brand. That must have been a very proud Belgian moment for you and your brother Bjorn. How did you decide that it was worth the risk? And you kind of talked about production bikes and racing bikes. So how did you dive into this specific brand, this venture?
Yeah. So for people that are not so familiar with the Belgian motorcycle history, in the 50s, early 60s, there was about 130 different Belgian motorcycle brands active, motorcycles and mopeds and all sorts. And there were three like really famous for us and prestigious brands, which were Saroléa, so the brand that we then later acquired, FN, which was a very successful racing brand in road racing, but also motocross, and Gillette. So those three brands were located in Wallonia, a part of Belgium close to the German border, in Herstal, and the factories of these three brands were actually in the same village. The special thing about Saroléa is that it was the smallest of the three brands, with the main focus on motocross and racing, but they probably had the most progressive designs and the most innovative engines from all the Belgian brands. In the late 30s, they had already had the conceived engines with double overhead camshafts, something that only came to fruition decades later in the industry. So that was a very special brand, more particular because our grand uncle, so my father's uncle, he used to be a factory racer for Saroléa and motocross and international on an international level. So that brand has always been talked about in the family, and it was always our uncle André with his Saroléa, and when you remember when he raced in Brands Hatch or whatever. So it was when we started thinking about making the first race bikes, I had to look into where this brand was and who owned it, and then I started the procedure to acquire the brand rights, because it's a family name. It's a family that still exists here in Belgium, and was lucky enough to get a go ahead and rebrand or brand our motorcycles into this famous Belgian brand. Now it was in the beginning it was a bit double, because obviously there's a huge following still of these bikes by the classic owners. So they weren't excited to hear that their beloved brand was going to be reimagined into an electric version. And that's something that we worked hard on in showing that we had the same spirit as the original company in trying to push technology, trying to build really quality products with great engineering and great materials, and prove them in a racing environment. So exactly what they would have done 50 or more years earlier. So that was in the beginning was a bit frightening, but when we look today, all the owners of the vintage motorcycles, they really embrace us and embrace the bikes, and they see that it wasn't done from a purely economical point of view, but more in a sense that we had. And what I believe is we should be proud of all these brands and all this history with motorcycles in Belgium, motorcycle brands, but also motorcycle riders, to reimagine that in a turning point of technology in the motorcycle industry. Now, 2009, obviously, that was maybe still a bit too early. It was battery technology wasn't where it is today. Components were still very expensive. Developing the knowledge, the experience, because we didn't have any experience prior to that first race bike. It took maybe longer than we would have hoped, but that's always the case. If you have this type of ambitious project, you need to be maybe a bit over enthusiastic. Otherwise, you wouldn't start the whole thing, and you wouldn't put all the time and effort and money into it. So today, the Saroléa brand is doing very well. It's well known maybe more within the electric motorcycle industry as a technological advanced company, but also for the people that own the classic bikes or have collections. They also appreciate what we've done, because the value of the vintage bikes has gone up dramatically since we started. So everybody's happy in the end. And then for the brand itself, we went from racing, and then there comes a point where the company also has to think about the future, and that's where my brother is more an entrepreneur than I am. I'm certainly not, and he decided then that we should build a limited series of spin-off bikes with the same type of technology and the same type of performance of the race bikes. So what was the race bikes are called the SPs, SP7s. And then we did our first road bike, which is the MANS 7. There followed a naked version of that one. So we did that for a couple of years. And then the next step was to grow the company. And we spent a long time trying to get external funding to really give the company a boost. And it was very difficult. I think it's a job in itself, finding investors, finding money. And again, maybe we were a bit early. Maybe, looking back, our product was and is still very niche, very expensive, but there's certainly a place for these types of motorcycles. But the potential to really grow the company with these types of products we didn't find any investors that could see through that. And then we had a breakthrough. We were approached by another Belgian company, a startup company, Trevor Motorcycles, and they asked us to design and develop and build a small, fun 1 to 5 type-ish bike. That was really the start of Saroléa becoming, next to being a manufacturer of its own products, becoming a technology partner for other companies. It was really a turning point. So then I got in touch with our dear friend John McInnes, because he's a great designer and a great guy. And we started discussing with John what type of bike should this be. And we went for the flat track route, because John had done some similar designs. And then I started to design the technical package, so define the geometry, define how big the battery should be, what type of motor we should use, where to locate the motor. Then that went to John, and he designed, the most simple but cool looking tracker ever. And then, we did the first 2 prototypes, and all that was done within, I think, 7 to 9 months. We had the 2 bikes up and running, and then the guys from Trevor, they did find an investor, and that led them to request to do a production run for them. So currently there's 10 people working on building and designing and homologating all those bikes, and then working on new projects for other customers. So that's where we are today, which is I think a healthy situation to be in for a company, but it took a long time. It took well over 10 years to get there, but we did it with our own money and our own friends and people that have supported us. Many people that now have a job at Saroléa. They were there from the first days, and they worked with us for years and years and years, for free. Just because they love to do it, and now we give them something back, and they have a job, and that's great. For me personally, it's it's matured, and it's on its own legs, and it's time for me to move on and do something different again, because I need to get my creativity going, and for me the racing is what it's all about. So I'm looking into a new chapter again, and maybe doing a bit more small scale, but really push the boundaries of what I think is possible with motorcycles, and I want to do that in Bonneville. So that's my next personal project. It's not the Saroléa project, to build a land speed record bike, because I need an excuse to come and see you guys in the States. So I might as well build something that goes fast and have fun with it together. So that's where we are today.
Have you discussed land speed development with Alp Sundgerdiken at all?
I'm a huge admirer of him. I sent him a message a couple of months ago. So Alp is, what can I say?
Mm-hmm.
He's an artist, and he's one of these guys, like the sidecar guys I was talking about earlier. He dreams it, he builds it, he gets on with it, and then he races the hell out of it. He's like such an inspiration. I think not only for me, but for a lot of people. And the fact that he puts so much effort in making these machines go fast but look so beautiful is something that, that's the pinnacle, because if it looks good, it goes fast, and the other way around. He's helping me with practical stuff. I've never been to the salt flat, so it's a very challenging environment, and especially coming from Europe. I have a few friends here who have built bikes and been there, who are helping me if I have any questions. So it's a nice community. Everybody helps everybody, but that's something that I've seen in the past. In the beginning when I did Le Mans, and that was still the case, and then it turns more professional, and people stop doing that because the money's getting bigger. And I think in Bonneville, but also on the Isle of Man, there are great examples of racing the way it used to be, like in the 50s or 60s, where the financial gains are not, people don't do it for making money. People do it because it's a challenge, and they want to put their stamp on history. And I really love that it's still possible to reinvent stuff and to do it differently. And Alp is a great example, but there are so many others of people not following, what's been done before. That's really what makes me tick, and why I want to do this.
We have a glass jar of Bonneville salt from our time spent with Alp, with Shinya, Brian Thompson, another custom builder, pre-unit Triumphs from August of 2018.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And when we came back, I think We shared that with McGinnis because we did a lot of motorcycle adventuring with John. And there was a plan for him to build a bike for me to race. This is all over, brown liquor. But then COVID hit. And then, of course, there's been a couple of times now where Bonneville's been canceled because of rain. So there's a lot of variables that are out of the racers and builders' control. But like you said, Isle of Man, Bonneville Speed Week people, they want to see everyone gain, because it's everyone's gain as far as camaraderie, friendship, a true community. Let us know when you plan to get out. We'll make that 9-hour drive. 9 hours?
A bit more than that.
But it is beautiful. Tell us a bit about your involvement with Sea Battery.
In our long road, our search to find an investor for Saroléa, at a certain point, we saw that it wasn't going to happen. And we needed to take a different approach. So my brother had the brilliant idea of splitting up the battery technology. So the knowledge that we built up over the last couple of years with our team. And we developed something very particular in that sense that our batteries are not soldered together. So a lot of companies that build batteries for automotive or for stationary applications, they would solder them together. And that's then very stable and very nice and very safe, but it's a bit problematic if you have a cell in a big battery that is not functioning properly. You can't really repair that battery in a very efficient or economical way. Some batteries as well are filled up with resins to make sure that there's no problems with vibrations. So what we've developed was this solderless battery technology. So it's quite innovative. And my brother said, if we would pull out this battery technology and we would pitch that to investors, maybe, the potential, the market is much bigger than these niche motorcycles. This was just before we had landed the deal to do the production of the Trevor motorcycles. And quite quickly, we found a building company in Belgium, a family-owned business, about 2,000 employees. And the owner of the company, he saw the potential for our battery technology in stationary batteries. So they build an industrial estate or an industrial building. It's their main business. And in Europe, most countries in Europe, if you build a new building, you have to turn that building energy not neutral, but try to make sure the building can be as energy efficient as possible. So it means putting solar panels on the roofs, but also storing the energy that you produced. So industrial buildings with solar panels, okay, that's been around for many years, but to store all that energy, that was the missing bit of technology in the Cordeel Group, building group. So they did a 50% investment in a new joint venture, which is called Sea Battery, because the group is called Cordeel with a C, and all their companies start with a C. So that was the start of a production facility for stationary batteries, but also for all our motorcycle batteries. So the Sea Battery plant produces for our own motorcycles, but also for Trevor and also for third parties and for all the building companies. And the company was founded within 1 month that we signed the deal with Trevor. So we've been looking for money for a decade, and not a decade, maybe 5-6 years. And then within 1 month, we signed 2 of our biggest commercial deals in our life. And both companies are actually working from the same plant. Quite ironic that it was so hard for so many years, and then it sort of all fell together within the same month. So it's quite funny looking back at it. So the number of people has grown and will continue to grow, and the projects get bigger. The battery company, from a pure financial point of view, is bigger than Saroléa as a company, but they both do their own projects. That's a big change, and we worked from my shed. We built all the race bikes, and the first Travers we built in the shed, and now it's all built in a factory.
In addition to the two partnerships you discussed, are you still involved with the Solvay Group?
Yes, the Solvay Group, which is a Belgian chemical industrial group, is that's where our offices are for Saroléa. So we have a long-term partnership with them. They've sponsored us for the Hours of LeMans TT races, and they continue to support us. The Solvay Group, they have a multitude of products for all types of industrial applications, but they specifically develop products for batteries, to produce batteries. And I think about 6 years ago, they acquired a big group was called Cytec. It's a big manufacturer of composite materials that is a supplier to most, I think, almost all Formula One teams, but also all the airplane manufacturers. So the headquarters is in Brussels, and that's also where the Saroléa offices are located. And up till today, we still have that partnership ongoing, and I think it will, because there's so much overlap in what they do and what we do. So that hopefully that will continue for a long time.
So earlier, Henri had hinted at some Hollywood projects you're involved with. You had sent me your CV, and there was an image of Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible. How were you involved with that? Walk us through that.
Quite a few years back, when we were still much smaller, but we were already racing on the TT. We got a call from a gentleman in the UK, and he was trying to find a motorcycle that could be used in filming a movie scene. So the guy is called Kieran Clark. He's a stuntman in most of Tom Cruise's movie, but he's also the stunt double of Tom Cruise. And his other job is that he actually films all the action scenes that are shot on motorcycles, where you have the camera rig mounted to the motorcycle. So there's famous scenes in Mission Impossible where they drive through Paris, and he's actually following the real Tom Cruise, which does most of his own stunts anyway, with a motorcycle with a camera rig. He's a good friend of one of our riders that we had on the Hours of LeMans TT. So he said, can't develop a motorcycle that is electric, because there's much less noise, there's much less vibrations. If we don't have a gearbox, it would make filming the stunts easier, although it's still very complicated, because if you have, I think it's almost 50 kilograms that's hanging way over the front wheel or the rear wheel, and the guy can't actually see where he's driving. He has to look on a monitor which is mounted on his handlebars, because the camera is so big, it obstructs his complete vision. So this guy is so talented, such a talented rider. Anyway, there's lots of advantages of using an electric motorcycle for this type of applications. One of them as well is that these cameras consume a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. And now with an electric motorcycle, they could use the electricity that's in the battery from the motorcycle. So all these things combined, we start looking at platforms and looking at how these cameras are mounted, because it's quite complex. They need to be very versatile and quick changing. So most of the motorcycles that are used in the movie industry, they have fixed rigs on the bikes or on the cars. On the cars they use booms, but on the bikes it's mainly fixed. And we developed a rig that was actuated with two electric actuators, so they could change the position of the camera while they were driving or in between the scenes. They didn't have to dismantle anything, and it made the productions go much faster and much more efficient. Because if you have the crews, there's so many people on these movies. If they have to stop for a quarter of an hour to change the position on the camera on the bike, that's not really the way to go. So we spent, I think, half a year developing the bike, and then the first movie it was used was Mission Impossible, and then it did a few Mission Impossibles, and it did a few other movies, I think Star Wars and Mary Poppins. So you never see the bike. There's a rare trailer, I think you can find it somewhere, of behind the scenes of one of the Mission Impossibles, where you see the stuntman Kieran driving the bike, chasing Tom Cruise. So that was a great project to work on, technically very challenging. But yeah, if you get the right kind of input, the guy that ordered the bike is the guy that's riding the bike, so he knew exactly what he wanted and what it had to do. So it was a very efficient collaboration, and it was done, and the bike's still going. It's very successful, and it's shot a lot of famous movies, so we're very proud of it.
I know that back when John McGinnis was working at Alta, they were invited down to Los Angeles to bring a bike for Keanu Reeves to consider for one of the John Wick movies, because they were on horses and they wanted the bad guys, the ninjas, to be on silent motorcycles. But I think the bikes themselves in real time were silent, but I think afterwards they added the motorcycle noise to give the impression. But they had Zero come down, they had Alta come down, and I think another off-brand, but I can see why. For you're talking about vibration and versatility, but the fact that they were also using battery power is something that both Henri and I kind of raised our eyebrows and looked at each other, because it's one of those, it makes perfect sense when you say it and when you hear it.
Yeah, it's something that's more technically challenging than most people imagine. I mean, you have the same the motorcycles that are used in the big sporting events like the Tour de France. These bikes have camera guy riding on the back, but the amounts of energy that these cameras need, they put special alternators on the bikes, and they keep them in a low gear and need to rev the thing much higher, because otherwise the camera drains the battery. I think there's a huge potential for these types of bikes, although it's very niche. But yeah, it's great to see that there is something that electric bikes are better at than their petrol counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
We are currently developing a bike to do indoor events, because emission restrictions on indoor events where you have to film or where you have to use motorcycles is getting much stricter in Europe. Also there's a potential for electric bikes. So these are areas where small manufacturers like ourselves can really make a difference and come up with a solution quickly, a tailor-made solution, that is. So that's great. And I think the people are ready to embrace that. They see the advantages. Don't get me wrong. I love petrol bikes just as much as the next guy, and I have quite a few of them. So I think it's not one or the other, but for a certain specific applications, there's a huge potential for electric bikes. And there's domains where it's still not a viable option to use electrics. But in most cases, I ride every day. I ride to the factory every day. I'd much rather just jump on one of the electric bikes, because, in the summer it doesn't get hot, and, it's quiet and it's nice and you can really enjoy it. This week I took my 66 Norton out, and that was just as much fun. But to ride every day on a 750 twin to go to work, I wouldn't do that anymore, because the practical, you need to get your engine a bit warmed up, and it's more cumbersome. It's very rewarding to hear it and to feel it and to feel the vibrations. But as a daily driver, I take one of the electric bikes. It's just more practical.
And what about it got me thinking, Torsten, you've not brought up anything about electric sitting scooters or mopeds. Is that something, because, if you're talking pure transportation, economy of scale, but also something that's lighter, so you have a wider range. Mm-hmm. Is that something that might be in Saroléa's future?
Yes, it is. It demands a different approach, because then you're really competing with BMW and with Chinese manufacturers, and it's a very competitive market. I think Cake has found, its own segment in there, in their own, quirky way. The market is huge, but for a small company like ourselves to develop such a product and be able to put it in the market at a competitive price, I think it would require additional external funding. It's not something that we would be able to do with enough speed by ourselves. I see the appeal. I drive an electric scooter as well, Vectrix. It's American built, a defunct company as well. My electric Vectrix is 12 years old, still works perfectly well. It was way ahead of its time. And again, this is an example where, maybe they were a bit too early and they spent millions developing this vehicle. And it was so well built. And it's actually the scooter that was used by BMW to develop their first electric scooter. If you compare the first electric BMW, it's actually a copy of the American-built Vectrix, the way the chassis was built and everything. So everybody copies everybody. I love it. I mean, in the cities, like here in Europe, the big cities like Paris, like the most sold motorcycle in Paris is an electric BMW scooter. So the potential is huge, but it's very specific to where you are in the world. I don't think it would work in the States. I don't know if scooters are very popular. Even with my friends, I get made fun of from time to time when I shop with my scooter. But I tell you, it doesn't need to be pretty. It's a very practical, I call it my two-wheeled van. It's very practical. You go to the shop, you put your stuff in. It's much more fun than sitting in traffic in your four-wheeled car. I always say you need to really motivate me to get in a car because I will do anything to not get in a car. I drive 365 days a year. It can snow, it can rain. I really don't care. As long as I can have my two-wheel freedom, then that's all that I need to be happy.
That's a true Belgian attitude, Torsten. I'm of the same mind with either commuting to the office on the motorcycle or in years past in the bicycle industry.
Yeah. It's mentally, it's very refreshing. It just, you're connected to the outdoors and you have different sensations and different smells. And with riding electrics, that's even more accentuated. That's much closer to riding a bicycle without having to make the huge effort. It's something that I need in my life, and it's like a drug.
Oh, yeah. And it's especially easier on the motorcycle when you're over the age of 50 and you want to get up that hill or you want to get to the coast, see the ocean. Believe me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But being a Belgian, it's I think we're very such a small country, but we're very diverse and we are very weird in some areas, and stuff we eat. And it's great to be a Belgian, and it's something that I'm very proud of. We have such a rich history. Like I said, we have so many world champions in motocross. It's unbelievable, and there are only 2 motocross tracks left in the whole of Belgium.
Yeah.
So, and we have all these great, heroes of mine like Malherbe and Everts and Habours and Jobé and all these, great guys. And that's something that sometimes I regret, is that we don't appreciate enough what we've done in the motorcycle industry. And I believe that the potential, that's something that electric motorcycles can bring back to, countries where it's difficult to open racetracks and to keep racetracks going. I think that's something that electrics could help, maybe create a new generation of motorcycle riders, even in cities, all these small, fun electric bikes where the kids can enjoy learning to ride in a safe way with limited, you can set the power limits and where they can drive and all that. I hope it will create a new wave of people that really enjoy motorcycles, like we were able to do, 50 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think the trick is creating that next generation. And like you said, I think in Europe, from what we've heard from friends and different guests, a lot of people started off-road because it was this no cars, no concrete to run into, this sort of area that you can kind of explore and kind of get bumped around a little bit, but really find that sense of freedom and get started young with a sense of independence and capability, and often leads to wanting to work on the machines and the things that are in your life. And even over here in the States, you watch the movie On Any Sunday, and it really seems like that was more common. There was a bit more of a culture of, especially off-road. Our infrastructure really isn't built for motorcycles, kind of like you said. It's hard to imagine scooters or even motorcycles finding more prominence over here, but it's a shame because there are such interesting applications for electric scooters, motorcycles, different things like that, where in Europe it seems like it's another option that people have, and you see anybody and everybody on two wheels, and making it electric only increases the chance that someone will take that leap and potentially find something that gives them as much joy as it seems to give us and you and everybody else who rides. So a lot of hope, I think, in the future, thanks to guys like you that are pushing that technology forward. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I hope if more people get to ride bikes, they will also, be more respectful and be more aware of motorcycle riders in traffic.
Yeah.
One comes with the other. If you've ridden a motorcycle, you're more likely to have a look in your rearview mirror from time to time, see if someone's lane splitting. I don't know if it's allowed where you guys live, but here it's allowed. So one of the very few privileges we have being a motorcyclist. But I really believe it will open up to people that otherwise would never ever imagine even getting their leg over a motorcycle, because they're afraid of them, but once you ride them, you're hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
it's just so much fun, and it's not about power or speed, or it's just fun.
It's like flying on the ground.
Yeah.
Hard to describe to somebody who hasn't tried it. And you're absolutely right. Once people try it, it takes hold.
I mean, you guys being American, what I'm really, really happy about is that the companies in America are really leading the way. You have companies like Zero and Livewire. When we started this whole electric thing with Saroléa in 2009, I would never have imagined that it was the States that would have shown the world the way forward. And that's great to see that you guys are reinventing your motorcycle industry and really, setting a great example. Something that I personally would never have expected from the States, but that's great to see.
Well, we'll take no credit for that, but thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, you're welcome.
So, Torsten, I do have a splitting hairs Belgian question.
Yes.
So, my father is 100% Belgian, I think third generation, northern Wisconsin. But we are from the Wallonian, the Brabant region.
Yes.
We can trace our family back to the 1600s. What is your stripe of Belgian? Flandrian? Wallonian?
No. I'm first of all, I'm Belgian, but I live in Flanders. Yes. No, I'm. There's a saying, a word that we use is la belgitude. It's a word that describes, or that says what being Belgian is about, and that the country is only a couple of square miles big, but it's so complex politically, and we have three different official languages. We have Flemish, Dutch, French, and German, and it's just so if you look how small it is and how complicated it is, but that's just what makes us unique. And I think being Belgium we're very lucky, because we can get to pick ideas from all these cultures within Belgium, from our surrounding countries. And the world's a very small place these days. And look at what's been invented in Belgium. It's just unimaginable. We have Tintin. We invented the saxophone. There's loads of cool stuff if you go on with it. So, yeah, I'm a Belgian and I'm very proud of it. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. I think we do not have that perspective over here, because I think most people, different parts of the world, look at the United States and can't quite make heads or tails of it.
I don't think we can.
Yeah, we can. Henri and I are born in Wisconsin, where back in the 1850s, it was the largest Belgian colony that settled in Kewaunee County, where my father was born, and where my brother just bought a farm, 5-acre farm, late last year. He was in California for 20 plus years, and he decided his roots were more important than living in California. So he bought a farm that I think was homesteaded in the 1850s, late 1850s. So he's feeling nostalgic, and he's very proud of his Belgianness. So it's good to hear that from your perspective, having lived there the majority of your life.
Well, I was lucky enough. I lived in a few places in the world, and my fellow compatriots, they sometimes complain about all the big mess it's here sometimes. But having had the opportunity to spend a bit of time around the world, it's a brilliant place to live. I absolutely love it. I mean, we have probably the best food in the world. Can't beat moule frites. But yeah, and it's very convenient. If I jump on the bike now and I start driving, I can be in France and in Spain and in Italy, and it's very central. And yeah, I feel privileged to be born here, but also to have been able to travel the world and compare, and there's lots of cool places and lots that I still want to visit and learn from, but it's not bad here.
Nice. Well, we love to hear that. So Torsten, beyond work, beyond all the projects, what do you hope to gain this year?
Friends, some new friends, and share my experiences, and hopefully, hopefully I can inspire people with my Bonneville project. People like Alp inspires people like me. I hope to do it as well. I mean, I'm not as pretentious as to believe that I can build something so cool looking as he does, but that's what I want to do. I want to have time to have nice conversations with like-minded people, and ride bikes, and ride bikes every day. That's the goal. Ride bikes every day, and build some more. If I can grab a land speed record along the way, that would be great as well. But you have to respect the salt and believe it will take many years for me to accomplish that dream. But I'm willing to work hard and spend a lot of energy in there and get that dream done as well. I dream big, but I try to do everything to accomplish them. So
we'll try our best to be there to drape the Belgian flag around you when you set that record.
That's that's very nice. I'm really looking forward to it. But be prepared to come to the salt flats a couple of years in a row.
Oh yeah. It's a game of persistence and patience. It's not every day you get to talk to a fellow Belgian. It's also not every day you get to talk to someone that has so much depth in 2 wheels and 4, that has a very compelling origin story with not just motorcycles, but his career and his career path. He certainly had a vision, and in pre-internet age, really went for it, got it, was very happy in his own skin, and it was a real joy to hear about it firsthand.
He's definitely the epitome of do what you love, listen to your gut, move on when you aren't happy. Like, he's kind of made a life where he's able to do that. And that's really cool.
I agree.
Motorcycles Are Drugs is produced in the San Francisco Bay Area. Stay tuned for a season of interviews and additional bonus episodes. You can find us online at motorcyclesaredrugs.com.